Today we're making a tier list of how every US state would fare as an independent country. So, like, if the federal government broke down and every state became autonomous, like in a sort of a Russian Civil War type scenario, how well would each state fare? So, in S tier, we're going to have the states that are so powerful that they start annexing neighboring states. And in F tier, we have the states that would immediately get annexed by neighboring states, states that would not be able to sustain themselves if they were independent countries. So the first one is Texas. I think it's no surprise Texas is going to be in S tier. Texas has a lot of good agricultural land in the east. It has a lot of military power. It has a lot of industry. It has a lot of big cities. Um, it's the most powerful state in its region. No other state that neighbors Texas can even compare to a fraction of its power. If Texas became an independent country and all the states, the federal government disappeared, Texas would probably start absorbing other states into its territory. A lot of states, neighboring states, might even like willingly agree to become part of Greater Texas. Uh, it has a lot of oil, so it has a lot of it has a lot of global influence. It can trade with foreign countries, and it has a lot of natural resources of its own. Next is California. This one might I don't know, might annoy some people, especially people from Texas, but California is also going in S tier. California has a great geography. It's one of the biggest agricultural producers. It has pretty much every natural resource that a country could ask for, except for oil, I think. But yeah, it has the Sierra Nevada mountains on its border, and which basically protect it from being invaded by any other state. Every other state that borders California doesn't even have a fraction of its population or its wealth or its arable agricultural land. So California would also do very well, as its own country. I think there was a famous statistic that California has the same population as the entire country of Canada. The entire country of Canada has about as many people as just the state of California alone. So that's pretty impressive. Alabama. Alabama is a poor state. It's not super wealthy. It's not super urbanized. It's not super developed. It doesn't have a high human development index. However, it does have a heavily armed population. It has a lot of very, very great agricultural land. The southeastern United States it's in the humid subtropical climate zone, similar to central and southeastern China. So it's a massive agricultural producer, and if it was independent, people would be able to sustain themselves. They would be able to grow their own food and have enough natural resources for their own population. However, it isn't very powerful. Uh, Although there aren't a lot of other states around Alabama that could threaten it or try to annex it. All the other states, that border Alabama in the deep south are not very powerful. So I'm going to put Alabama in B tier. It would do okay. Next is Connecticut. Connecticut is a very wealthy state with a very high human development index, although it is a very small state and it's surrounded by a lot of eh. I guess I guess New Jersey and New York are more powerful and more populous than Connecticut. Yeah, and Connecticut doesn't because it's so small. It doesn't have as many natural resources, and it would probably end up, being uh, under the sphere of influence of either New York or New Jersey. So I'm gonna put it in, eh, maybe D tier. Yeah, I don't think it would hold on to independence for that long. Wait, no, no, sorry, this is Colorado. Oh yeah, this is Connecticut. All right, yeah, Connecticut, D tier. Oh yeah, Colorado's next. Okay, sorry for mistaking Colorado for Connecticut. It has a big C on it. Uh, yeah, Colorado is a very mountainous state, so it has natural geographic defenses. I think it's one of the most you know economically prosperous states, and I don't think Wyoming or Utah or Nevada or I don't know Kansas or Nebraska could really threaten Colorado, and because of its natural defensible mountain geography, it would probably do fairly well. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna put it in A tier. It wouldn't be a very successful, or I don't know. So it wouldn't be a very like highly prosperous state, but it wouldn't get annexed. Or actually, I'm going to put it because of its small population. I'm going to put it in B tier. I think this is Delaware. Yeah, Delaware would immediately get annexed. It's surrounded by a lot more populated, more or urbanized, more powerful uh, states that have a lot better geography. It's also very flat, and it's surrounded by ocean. It's a small peninsula, and you know, uh, oh wait, Florida, another peninsula. Florida is, I think, in the top three most populated states now, and if this was like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, I would say that Florida would probably be in D tier, maybe even F tier. But because Florida is the wealthiest, most populated, most urbanized, most industrial state in its immediate region, it would probably project its power outward into the deep south if it became its own country. Although it is right on Cuba's doorstep. Although Eh, Florida would probably be able to repel an invasion from Cuba. I'm gonna put Florida in A tier. Also, because it's a peninsula and it juts out into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, it would probably be a pretty influential trading power, an influential naval power, uh, and it would probably have trade with like Latin American countries. So yeah, A tier. Georgia. So Georgia is, I think, the most influential and economically prosperous state in the Deep South because of Atlanta. Maybe North Carolina might be in competition with Georgia. Uh, I mean, Florida's not. If we don't include Florida as part of the Deep South, then Georgia would be one of the most influential states, as the first or second most influential state in the Deep South. So yeah, it would probably also if in this scenario where every single state gained autonomy and became its own country, there would probably at some point be some kind of conflict between Georgia and Florida. But I'm putting Georgia in B tier. Hawaii. Hawaii is an island nation. It's uh, it's got a lot of military bases. It doesn't have a lot of natural resources or a large population, but it's so far away from everything else. Um, I think it would probably remain independent. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Actually, I'm not sure. Well, I don't know. With if global warming and sea level rise and the melting of polar glaciers is still a thing in this scenario, then in like 50 to 100 years time, Hawaii would probably have some problems. But I'm gonna put it in B tier for now. I think this is Washington D.C. Washington D.C. would immediately get annexed. It's not even a state. It's just a city. Um, it would be incorporated into whatever is the probably like Virginia or something would gobble up all those like Delaware, Maryland, and Washington D.C. Uh, yeah, they would probably be all gobbled up by Virginia. Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a decent amount of natural resources, a small population, um, but it doesn't have a lot of states that could threaten it. Maybe Canada. It might get annexed by Canada or Minnesota. I don't know. I'm gonna put it in C tier though. Um, Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas is. It's surrounded by some states that could. I don't know. Louisiana, Tennessee. I'm gonna put it in C tier next to Wisconsin. It could probably it does have a lot of good farmland. Arkansas has a lot of good farmland uh, and a heavily armed population, but it's not super. I don't know. It doesn't have that much influence in the U.S. I'll put it next to Wisconsin. Idaho. Idaho is a mountainous state. It has mountainous geography, although it is surrounded by some more heavily populated states. I think Washington and Oregon are have a bigger population than Idaho. So yeah, I'll put it in this tier with along with Wisconsin and Arkansas. Okay, Iowa, same thing, same thing. Kansas, Okay, Kansas is in the breadbasket. It has a lot of a good agricultural land for growing grain. Uh, so it has a lot of, it would have a lot of bargaining chips with all the Great Plains states have that, like that massive agriculture industry as a bargaining chip with the other states in the U.S. Since they probably would be able to export a large amount of food, but the population is very small. The geography is very flat. It would probably be easy to annex. And while the population is probably heavily armed, there just aren't that many people, and it's completely flat. So I'm gonna put it in. Eh, all right. Nah, I'm gonna put it in C tier. Kentucky. Um, let's see. Kentucky, pretty small population. They've got good farmland. They've got forests. They've got a heavily armed population. Um, but they're not heavily urbanized. They don't have a lot of industry, and yeah, they are surrounded by some more powerful states. So I'm going to put it along with the others here. Maryland, D tier, along with Connecticut. It's a very small state, and it's surrounded by much bigger, much more influential, much more economically, militarily, and powerful states with bigger populations. Massachusetts, yeah, same. Actually, I think Massachusetts is far enough from New York, the main population center in Massachusetts, that it could maybe hold its own. Mississippi, I think it's the poorest state in the U.S., along with West Virginia, and it's completely flat. It's completely flat, and it's along the Mississippi River in the deep south. I think all the states, yeah, actually, yeah, all the states that border Mississippi are much more powerful, much more developed, much more, way more industry, way more economically prosperous. And while Mississippi does have a heavily armed population, and they've got farmland and they've got a heavily armed population, they are in a vital spot along the Mississippi River, completely flat land and a very poor state surrounded by states that are considerably richer. So I'm going to put it in D tier. Missouri. Um, actually, I don't know if there are any states that could threaten Missouri. Yeah, I'm going to put Missouri in B tier. It could be a regional power. I don't think that there are any states around Missouri that could threaten it, and it is a pretty prosperous state in terms of like economic output. Montana, okay, Montana is very mountainous. Um, it's yeah, I think the only state that could threaten Montana is maybe North Dakota, but probably not. Maybe Canada. Yeah, Canada could probably annex Montana, although it is a mountainous state. Again, they've got agricultural land, they've got a heavily armed population, and they've got some natural resources to bargain with. I'll put it in C tier. Nebraska, same thing. All the actually like all the breadbasket states, the Great Plains states, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and South Dakota, North Dakota might form an alliance and become one entity. Oklahoma would probably join to avoid getting annexed by Texas. Although it is possible that in this scenario, the population of Oklahoma might actually want to be part of Texas or would rather be part of Texas than part of the Great Plains Federation or whatever. Which I know that people in Oklahoma tend to not like Texas. And Texas is like a regional rival, but I don't know if there actually was some kind of breakdown of the federal government. I don't know, people's opinions might change. Texas is probably culturally more similar to Oklahoma than than the other Great Plains states are to Oklahoma. So actually, where is Oklahoma? Yeah, it's down here. Yeah, I'm gonna put Oklahoma in D tier. Sorry if you're from Oklahoma, because it has Texas to the south and the other Great Plains states to the north. So it would end up either being annexed by the other Great Plains states or by Texas. Uh, all right, Nevada. Nevada has really one big city, which is Vegas. I don't think Reno is that big. Um, and it doesn't have a lot of natural resources. I guess it has like minerals and mining and stuff, but yeah, its population is pretty small and it's mostly desert, very bad for agriculture, not a lot of water. It goes in D tier. New Jersey, New Jersey could be a regional power if it doesn't get annexed by New York. Um, New Jersey could start annexing the other small states around it, like I don't know. Well, actually, there's also Pennsylvania to worry about. Yeah, I guess New Jersey would go in. Yeah, New Jersey's pretty small. New Jersey is I think the most densely populated state in the United States. New Jersey's basically one big suburb. A lot of the population of New Jersey, I think, are suburbs of New York and Philadelphia. So people who work in cities that are in other states. A lot of New Jersey is just cities and suburbs. They don't have a lot of farmland. They don't have a heavily armed population. I think they have one of the lowest rates of gun ownership among civilians in the United States. Yeah, because it's so urbanized, and economically prosperous or economically, I guess, economically influential. Other states would be a tempting target for other states to try to annex. And because it doesn't have, it's not that militarily powerful on its own, it probably would get annexed, but it's not as vulnerable as Washington D.C. or Delaware. Okay, next is New Mexico. I think this is new. Yeah, this is New Mexico. Yeah, it's a state with a lot of deserts. I know there are mountains in the north. There are mountains and forests in the north, but it's a state with yeah, it borders Texas, I think, which makes it vulnerable to annexation. Also, Mexico. Uh, Mexico would probably be trying to get some of its old territory back. So yeah, I'm putting New Mexico in D tier. Um, New York. It's the biggest, most populous state in the region. Uh, yeah, it's got a lot of natural resources in upstate New York. It's got timber. It's got farmland. It's got one of the biggest populations. I think New York was recently overtaken by Florida in population size, and its population has been shrinking for a couple years now. Um, New York is, I think, the fourth biggest population in the U.S. now, after California, Texas, and Florida. But yeah, it's got significantly more people than any of the states in New England or the Mid Atlantic region. I'm putting it in. Yeah, yeah. There are no other states that can threaten New York in the region. However, a coalition of like New England and like some of the Mid Atlantic states might be able. The thing with New York is that the I think like 60% of the population of the state of New York lives just around New York City, in the New York City and Long Island area. Uh, Whereas upstate New York has a much smaller percentage of its population. So Canada or Maine or what is it? Basically a bunch of New England states or Canada might collaborate to basically annex upstate New York, and the people who live around New York City might have a hard time doing anything about it. So even though yeah, I guess its proximity to Canada would make it uh, not in S tier. I'll put it in A tier. Actually, Texas has a close proximity to Mexico, uh, but I don't think Mexico would try to annex Texas. I think Texas would actually be able to hold its own against Mexico. I don't know if New York would be able to hold its own against Canada, though. I don't even know if Canada would want to annex parts of the United States. Although, yeah, because most of the population, or a majority of the population, is concentrated around the very southern tip of New York, uh, that weird unequal population distribution. I'm putting it in A tier instead of S tier. North Carolina. North Carolina is the more prosperous of the two Carolinas. Uh, it is surrounded by some other prosperous states too, though, like Virginia. However, it has a lot of natural resources. It's very urbanized now. It has a lot of industry, and it also has a lot of great farmland, and it has a pretty sizable population too. So it's kind of a regional powerhouse now. So I'm putting it in B tier. Actually, I'm putting New York in B tier too. That uneven population distribution is probably wouldn't bode well for them. Well, I don't know what this is. Is this South Dakota? I don't even know. Um, all right, I think this is South Dakota. Hold on. Yeah, this is North Dakota. Okay, so yeah, South Dakota goes here, along with the majority of the other Great Plains states, except for Oklahoma. And then North Dakota has oil. North Dakota has oil, although it is also close to Canada, and it is significantly less populated than Canada. So if Canada tries to annex North Dakota, it probably could. Although because it has oil, I don't know. Should I put it in B tier? It kind of is a regional powerhouse as well. You know, as long as Canada stays out of its way, it would be in B tier. If Canada decides to invade it for some reason, then it would drop down to C tier, maybe D tier. But assuming Canada isn't going to do anything, uh, it's a B tier along with New York, North Carolina, Missouri. It's these regional powerhouse states. Um, all of these states are kind of regional powerhouses in their own respective regions, except Hawaii, which is just an island chain. Oregon. Oregon, it's got a lot of natural resources, but it's also close to California and Washington. Um, it might form like an alliance or like a federation or a union with Washington to defend itself against California. But yeah, and it's also got a pretty small population, so I'm putting it in C tier. Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is another regional powerhouse. And because of the geography of Pennsylvania, because of how long it is, and it has a mountain chain, it has, well, I mean, the Appalachian Mountains are not that tall, but they are difficult to navigate because of all, the hills are so closely clustered together and steep. And the population of like rural Pennsylvania is pretty heavily armed, and also they have access to a lot of good farmland. They can probably sustain themselves pretty well on their own if they had to. It's got a lot of natural resources. It's got coal. There actually is an oil field, I think, underneath western western Pennsylvania and parts of Ohio. So that it's from that same, I think, that um, carboniferous deposit that the coal in the mountains of West Virginia is from. So yeah, because of their geography, because the state is pretty long east to west, it would be pretty hard to invade the entire state. There would always be holdouts. It's got the Appalachian Mountains running through it would give it pretty defensible geography. Uh, it would probably serve them well to like put their capital in the middle of the state in the mountainous region, not Philadelphia. But yeah, I guess Philadelphia is far enough from New York that it could project its power into New Jersey. New Jersey, in this scenario, if there was like an actual war in the Northeast, New Jersey would probably be split between Pennsylvania and New York. So I'm putting Pennsylvania in B tier with the other regional powerhouses. Um, see, Utah, I'll put it in C tier. Although, yeah, they've got Mormons, so they've got like a unified identity group. But I think Colorado has a slightly bigger population. Yeah, I'll put Utah in. Actually, I don't know. The Mormons seem like they might be able to, put up a fight and sort of keep a. I don't know. They might even make a little country of their own. I'll put them along with Colorado, along with the regional powerhouses, even though it's not really a regional powerhouse. Oh wait, Rhode Island, F tier. Rhode Island is between Connecticut and Massachusetts, and it would probably be annexed by one of them, or it would be, or all of them. All of those states would be annexed by, or split by Pennsylvania and New York. South Carolina, it's smaller and a little bit less prosperous or less developed, and has a smaller population than North Carolina. So I'm putting it in C tier, while North Carolina goes in B tier. Tennessee, mm, I'm gonna put it here in C tier along with Kentucky for similar reasons. I think this is Vermont. Is this Vermont or New Hampshire? Let's see. Yeah, this one I think is New Hampshire, and this is Vermont, or maybe the other way around. I'm not actually sure. Yeah, I think this is Vermont. Yeah, Vermont. D tier, because there are bigger entities surrounding it. And where is, yeah, New Hampshire? Same. Okay, Virginia. It's a regional powerhouse. It goes along with the other regional powerhouses. It's highly developed. A lot of it's got, not only does it have big cities and highly urbanized, a lot of industry, a big population, but it also has a lot of good farmland, and it has defensible geography because the Appalachian Mountains are to the west of it. So yeah, and the other states directly to the north or directly to the south are not that. I guess North Carolina is a would be a pretty significant rival, and also Pennsylvania. But there are some buffer states, I think, between Pennsylvania and Virginia, or maybe they share a very small border. I'm not really sure. Okay, West Virginia. West Virginia is poor. It's a very poor state. It's got coal, which is kind of tempting for other states around it to try to annex it. It has a small population, although it does have a very heavily armed population. So if the people of Virginia decided to fight a guerrilla war to keep their independence, it would probably be like Afghanistan or Vietnam. It would be very difficult to fully annex it if the people uh, kept fighting. So it all comes down to the fighting spirit of the Appalachian. Those, what are they? The Scots Irish descended mountain people in West Virginia. Um, but it is not very powerful. It certainly is not powerful. It's not heavily populated. It's a very weak state, but the geography is very defensible, like dense forests, like rugged terrain. Like the mountains are not super tall. The Appalachian Mountains are very small, kind of like the Scottish Highlands, but it's a lot more challenging of a terrain than the Scottish Highlands because of the dense forests and the sort of like ruggedness of the hills. I guess I'll put it in C tier. It's very defensible, but it's not very strong. Wyoming has one of, I think, the smallest population in the U.S., and it's surrounded by states with bigger populations, and it's got quite a bit of natural resources, and not enough people to defend those natural resources. So it probably would get absorbed into some other entity. So D tier, um, D tier, but it's not as low as Delaware, the city of Washington D.C., or uh, Rhode Island, which are really tiny. They're basically just like one or two cities in surrounded by much larger entities. Alaska, yeah, Alaska goes in not A tier, S tier. Alaska is geographically separated from the rest of the United States. It's got a lot of natural resources. It's got a lot of oil. It's yeah, the people could completely sustain themselves on their own if they had to, and it does border Canada, but that the region of Canada that borders Alaska has a very low population, and if the people of Alaska, I think Alaska has a bigger population than than the surrounding Canadian provinces. Except, I don't know, maybe British Columbia might have a. But the only part of Alaska that really borders British Columbia is the tail end of Alaska, which is just a bunch of like rugged fjords. Um, so so yeah, if the people of Alaska, well, I guess it's also near Russia, isn't it? But again, that part of Russia, eastern Siberia, is extremely there's almost no one living there. If Russia or Canada tried to invade Alaska, their soldiers would have to travel over thousands of miles of rugged terrain. In the case of Canada, it's the Canadian Rockies and the Arctic boreal forests. And in the case of Russia, they would have to travel across the entirety of Siberia, basically like thousands and thousands of miles of like uh, frigid Arctic, boreal forest, across the biggest continent on Earth. I don't know. Yeah, I guess there is Russia and Alaska there. Or sorry, there is Russia and Canada on either side of Alaska. So I don't know. Should I put it in the same? Here's the thing: if Russia and Canada, or if Russia and Canada were not, flanking either side of Alaska, it would be it would probably be one of the most like defensible, uh, uninvadable countries in North America. But yeah, yeah, Russia might try to take Alaska back, and I don't know. I don't know if they have the capability of getting their soldiers. I know the Russian Navy would probably not be able to really threaten Alaska, but they do have planes and tanks, and I don't know how efficiently they would be able to get those planes and tanks across Siberia. They might have some military vehicles stationed in the Amur region, like in Vladivostok. So I'm going to put it in A tier, along with Florida. I really don't like seeing Texas and California up here. Like, I do not like either of these states. I Yeah, I would never want to live in either one of these states for various reasons. But yeah, seeing these two states up here at the top in S tier just feels, I don't know, it hurts my soul a little bit. But eh. All right, Arizona. Arizona would probably go in. Yeah, along with New Mexico. Again, it has that border with Mexico, which might try to annex it. It has there's Texas um, to the east, which is far more powerful. Arizona is very dry. It's very arid. It doesn't have a lot of good farmland. It has some, but yeah, the mountains in Arizona, just like in New Mexico, the more mountainous regions are in the north. So that border with Mexico is mostly flat. So if Mexico wants to like take back its old land, they can just walk across the border into Arizona. Same with Texas. There isn't really any kind of geographic barriers between Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Like Texans can just like walk across all those states and take them. Okay, Illinois. Illinois is a very populated state because of Chicago. It's got a lot of good farmland. I think, yeah, it is a regional powerhouse. Um, the only other state in the region that can compare to the power level of Illinois in terms of like economy, in terms of natural resources, in terms of power projection, infrastructure, um, yeah, like industry. The only other states in the region that are comparable would be like Ohio and Missouri, and I think there are buffer zones between Illinois and those other states. So yeah, it would be here along with the other regional powerhouses. Indiana. Yeah, Indiana is stuck between Ohio and Illinois. So, and it has a smaller population than both. It has less big cities, less industry, less of everything. So yeah, it goes here in C tier. Uh, Louisiana. I like Louisiana. Louisiana is an interesting state. It's a very culturally rich state. You know, it has that French history in the South. It has that Cajun culture on the bayou. It has New Orleans is a very cool city with a lot of history. It has a heavily armed population, and it has a lot of like dense, thick forests and swampland, and places where guerrilla fighters can hide. Uh, but it does also border Texas. I don't know. I'm gonna put it here. It's a shame because Louisiana has seems like it should have a lot of potential, but yeah, it's just surrounded, it's not surrounded actually. It's really just Texas. The only state that can really threaten Louisiana is Texas. Um, Now we've got Maine. Maine borders Canada. It has a very small population, and yeah, there are even other states in New England I think that have bigger populations. So yeah, D tier. Michigan. Okay, Michigan is in the Great Lakes region, which is it's a very influential or it's a very geographically important region. Uh, the Great Lakes have a waterway to the Atlantic Ocean. They also facilitate trade throughout the Midwest and southern Canada. So basically, the big cities, these Rust Belt cities in the Midwest, these former industrial hubs of America, and the most populated regions of southern Canada can freely trade amongst themselves, along the Great Lakes, and they have access to the outside world, to the global oceans through the St. Lawrence River, I think. And Michigan is, I don't know, I don't know if it would be annexed. Here's the thing: I think and Ohio and Canada are on either side of Michigan, and they both, obviously have a higher. They both have a higher population. They're both, yeah, they're both a lot more powerful than Michigan is. So I feel like Michigan, it's a peninsula that juts out into the Great Lakes, so it's a very strategic area. It might be annexed by either Ohio or Canada, or maybe split between the two. Maybe Canada would take the Upper Peninsula, and the rest of Michigan would be taken by Ohio. I'm going to put it here along with Louisiana. It's a shame because Michigan is a beautiful state. I spent the first 3 or 4 years of my life in Michigan. It is a beautiful state. Minnesota, same. It goes in C tier. Um, it's a a highly developed state. It has a high human development index, but the population is so small, and again, it has Canada to the north. Although I don't know if I want to assume that. Yeah, see, I put New York in B tier because I wasn't assuming that Canada would try to annex it. But if the federal government broke down and all the states had a like basically a battle royale, even if Canada wouldn't be trying to annex states, then other states in the U.S. probably would be. And Michigan does have Ohio to the south, and it is a regional rival, and Ohio does have an upper hand over Michigan. All right, next is Washington and Ohio. Washington will go in the same tier as Oregon. Put it right here next to Oregon. Um, and then Ohio. Yeah, Ohio goes in the regional powerhouse tier, along with Illinois, along with Missouri, along with New York and Pennsylvania. Ohio is a Rust Belt state, which has been losing population for a while, but it is at the heart of the Rust Belt, which means that it's the most populated and most like Michigan has like Detroit, and it has a few like industrial cities and some big industrial cities in the South. But the north of Michigan, the northern peninsula, and also the northern half, or the upper peninsula and the northern half of the southern peninsula of Michigan, is mostly just uninhabited forest, and also it's like it's cold, almost boreal forest. So there isn't a lot of good agriculture there. The parts of Michigan that have a low population, the like more wilderness parts of Michigan, are not that good for agriculture. You can still do agriculture there. It's just not the best you know uh, environment for agriculture. Probably it probably has slightly acidic soils because of all the pine trees. Now Ohio doesn't have any region which is not good for agriculture. All of Ohio is great for agriculture. Ohio has a lot of groundwater. It's got aquifers underneath it, so it has no, and it also gets plenty of rainfall, so it has no issues. Even though it has a climate similar to Michigan, it doesn't have these like sort of boreal zones in the far north. So it basically has this like lower the standard lower Midwestern climate all throughout the state, and it's got the southeastern Ohio has the Appalachian Mountains, and West Virginia and Kentucky are not really a threat to Ohio. They have much smaller populations, much less developed states. Indiana is like a buffer zone between Ohio and Illinois. Indiana is also not as heavily. Uh, it's not as like industrially developed as Ohio. And the thing with Ohio is that it's got some big cities that are developed industrial cities, but the rest of Ohio that is not cities is interspersed with farmland. Um, it doesn't have it doesn't have any non-farmable land. So pretty much every corner of Ohio has some kind of field growing some kind of crop or some kind of like animal, cows, pigs, goats, whatever. Uh, and it's got Lake Erie to the north, which separates it from Canada. So it's got a geographic barrier to sort of protect it from Canada. If Canada invades southward, which we're assuming in this scenario that Canada kind of keeps to itself, but if it did invade southward, it would be more difficult to invade Ohio than like Michigan or Minnesota or even upstate New York. Um, but yeah, so the south and the east of Ohio are geographically defensible by like mountain barriers, and the people that live in those mountain regions are very small in population. And the one part of Ohio that is not geographically defensible, the western part, which is like flat land. Uh, the neighboring state to the across the border is Indiana, which is not that powerful compared to Ohio. So Ohio would probably be a regional powerhouse. It would probably project its power outward into Indiana. Indiana might actually be split between Ohio and Illinois, and also into possibly Michigan. Although Michigan being a rival of Ohio, they might put up a fight, or Ohio might just leave Michigan alone. I mean, Ohio has pretty much everything that it needs, although it isn't that big. Ohio is about the size of Ireland, a little bigger maybe. Ohio might be a little bit bigger than Ireland, although yeah, it is the most developed state in its region. Um, So yeah, it certainly wouldn't get annexed immediately by the surroundings. Yeah, it goes uh, in B tier. So let's see what we have. Yeah, Rhode Island, Delaware, and DC in F tier. That makes sense. That feels right. We've got Texas and California in S tier. Uh, then we've got Florida and Alaska in A tier. I'm looking at these other states and in B tier and seeing if any of them would qualify for A tier. Um, let's see. Seeing Florida in like ranking above uh I don't know, like New York or Pennsylvania or I don't know. Yeah. Seeing Florida rank this high. doesn't really feel right. But yeah, it is a really, I don't know. Does Florida have the capability of defending itself? I guess it has the capability to. I would say that Florida would probably have the capability to defend itself from Cuba. Um, it has a bigger population. It has, U.S. naval ships and naval equipment that would be left behind after the federal government, goes away for whatever reason. Um, and I don't see any of the states north of Florida really threatening it. Uh, what is Georgia? Isn't Georgia north of Florida? Yeah, Georgia is. Yeah, Georgia is north of Florida, and Georgia is pretty powerful as well. Georgia, I think that the southern regions of Georgia are heavily forested as well. Um, so I don't know. Florida, like invading northward into Georgia, might be tricky. Uh, although the main population centers in Georgia are in the north, so Georgians invading into Florida, that forested region of southern Georgia would be a geographic barrier, would serve as a geographic barrier initially between Florida and Georgia. Um, yeah, thing is, Georgia is in the deep south. Florida is a peninsula. I don't know. I feel like there should be a tier then between A and B, and we just have Florida in that tier by itself. Or we move a couple of these B tier states up into A tier. I guess we could move Pennsylvania. Maybe Ohio? Actually, I'm gonna move Kentucky. Wait, this is Kentucky down into C tier. Yeah, along with Tennessee. I think I might have intended to put. I don't remember. I might have intended to put. Wait, no, shit. This is Virginia. I'm sorry. Where's Kentucky? Uh, here's Kentucky. I'm just seeing the outlines of the states. No, I haven't slept for a while. It's not my fault. All right. Yeah, this is looking good. I feel like if I put Pennsylvania and Ohio and Hawaii up into A tier, or yeah, probably Georgia as well, it would a lot of people would disagree with that. Here, I'm gonna make a new tier. I'm gonna call it A minus, and I'm gonna put Florida in that tier. There we go. Florida is in the A minus tier. Maybe we should make a B plus tier. I think I'm going a little overboard, and this video is getting a little long. Or I'll change this to B minus. There we go. So Alaska's going to be an A tier, Florida in A minus. Then we've got B and B minus. So which states are we moving up? I think Pennsylvania, due to its geography, its natural resources, its population, it's going in above these other states in official B tier. Um, I guess Virginia, which neighbors Pennsylvania, which is pretty close to Pennsylvania. Although, yeah, it is also near. Although Pennsylvania is near New York. Yeah, New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia are all pretty powerful states, but they all border other powerful states. I don't know. All right, I'm gonna put the strongest of the regional powerhouses in B tier. So Ohio, Virginia, um, and yeah, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, not New York, because most of the population of New York is centered in this small corner of the state, and yeah, it's I feel like New York probably wouldn't be that. I'm not sure. Eh, yeah, Illinois has some. Yeah, I'm gonna keep. Yeah, I'm gonna keep Illinois in B minus. Hawaii being a small island chain in the middle of the Pacific, it just isn't that powerful. Although there aren't a lot of countries that would want to annex it or would go through the trouble of sailing across the Pacific to annex it. It's but because it's so small and it's going to stay in B minus tier. I'm contemplating moving Georgia up. Um, Alabama stays in B minus tier though. Yeah, the Rocky Mountain states, the Colorado and Utah, are staying in B minus tier just because their populations are so small. Their states are so rugged, and the terrain is so difficult to traverse. While they might not be invaded by, or they might be able to repel invasions from other states because of their defensible geography. Just developing those states and moving around in those states. I feel like they would be a lot more fractured. Um, uh, there might just be a bunch of little factions that control different parts of the states. Uh, yeah, plus the population is small. So, all right, North Carolina has doesn't have a buffer with Virginia. It is a regional powerhouse, and Georgia has a buffer with North Carolina in the form of South Carolina, and yeah. All right, so we've still got Texas and California in S tier, Alaska in A, Florida an A minus, simply because it's surrounded by other entities, and also it's a peninsula, and also it's very close to sea level. So with sea level rise, it might threaten a lot of the most of the cities in Florida are around the coasts, and most of the population of Florida is now very urban. So the farmland of Florida is also shrinking, and it doesn't have a lot of natural resources. Ooh, yeah. So yeah, I might actually have to move Florida down. Then there won't be anything to take its place. Then there's going to be nothing in A minus tier. You know what? No, I'm keeping Florida in A minus tier. Um, Assuming we have the same geography as now, assuming sea levels don't rise, uh, I think Florida has enough, economic and military might to push upwards into the deep south. Or actually, no, Georgia's above Florida. Damn, this is tough. Maybe I should put Florida in B tier, remove A minus tier, and just have all these states below Alaska. Hmm. Now the video is getting too long, so I'm gonna keep it how it is. This is obviously subjective opinion. Feel free to disagree or say how you would change the rankings in the comment section. If you like the video, leave a like. Uh, and yeah, I'll come out with more videos like this in the future.